we're going to try and make a good micro ecosystem for the mycelium to grow in. So that's why it's a bucket, because it'll kind of protect your substrate, which is the straw. It'll protect it from the elements where other competing organisms might try to get in, but it'll also just provide it with like temperature and trap in that humidity. That way the mycelium can just spread, and it'll spread like within 10 to 14 days, it'll be ready. A lot of it's just so uncharted, where if you Google certain things that you're trying to figure out, there's just no answers out there, and you just have to figure it out yourself. So. I always tell people that I failed growing mushrooms more times than I've grown them, because a lot of people will get like contamination and they'll get discouraged and they won't want to grow anymore, but it's like that's just part of the process. Like that's probably half of growing mushrooms. So I just put a little bit in there. You can reach in there and break up the big chunks, and then another layer, and we're just going to make some lasagna. Just going to keep layering it, and that'll just get it to where there's just layers where it will spread out from. We call it points of inoculation.
The origins of mushrooms have fascinated humans throughout history. Speculation has plagued our understandings of these strange organisms, and their mysterious appearances inspired ancient theories like rising from the crystallized residue of decomposing leaves, or falling from shooting stars to the ground, or maybe just spontaneous generation from nothing into something.
To the superstitious medieval mind, the phenomenon of fungus seemed supernatural. The toadstool readily accepted as an occult symbol, central to a mystic world of devil's spit and devil's bunions, toad's cheese, and witch's butter.
Amanita muscaria, one of the most recognizable mushrooms in the world due to its frequent appearances in art across time. Long before scientists took an interest in them, mushrooms captured the imagination of artists and writers. Our understanding of mushrooms was built upon our human senses. We learned about them through observation, finding them in their natural habitats, and carefully illustrating each individual species, and filling books with hundreds upon hundreds of pages of new and unique fungi. We also relied on our sense of taste. Initial funding for mycological studies was often given on the basis of identifying which mushrooms we could eat and which ones we could not. The invention of the microscope revealed the limitations of our human senses and helped us see mushrooms in a new light. Mushrooms had been classified as plants since the early 18th century, but their unique characteristics that set them apart from the botanical world had gone unnoticed to the naked eye.
Fungi can be single cells or they can be giant colonies of things, but they're all kind of the same sort of cell. I think all microbes are fantastic, but mushrooms in particular are really neat because I appreciate their interesting biology. They have very, very complex life history patterns, and they're the kings of decomposition. If not for fungi and mushrooms, we would be knee-deep in dead things.
Mushrooms and other organisms that cause dead material to decay are called saprophytes. and they're an important part of the chain of life. By causing decay, they help to fertilize the soil and make possible the growth of plants. A fungus is like a plant in many ways, but it has no chlorophyll, so it must get its food from other living things. That's why some scientists feel that fungi should be classified separately from plants as well as from animals.
When fungi became their own kingdom in the 1970s, a new world of life appeared before our eyes.
So mushrooms themselves are the reproductive fruiting bodies of something called mycelium. So there'll be mycelium on the ground or on wood like that, and when the conditions are right, it's wet, it's the right temperature, the mycelium, the cells that make it up called hyphae, will kind of form together to fruit an actual mushroom.
The underground network of mycelium often grows larger than we can imagine, potentially covering multiple acres of land. While obtaining food and nutrients for the fungus, it also improves the soil structure and nutrient availability.
It's almost like a drug. Like, as soon as I started finding one, I wanted to find another, and then I researched them, and there's, oh my gosh, there's 5 more that look even cooler than this one. So yeah, just getting out, and since it's such an underrated science, there's so much to learn. I think it's just the complexity of them. I've always been like, if it's not a challenge, I'll get bored really easily, and since there's not like a ton of information on mushrooms that you can just find, it's fun. It's almost like a scavenger hunt to search to try to figure out stuff about mushrooms. I have a club called Falafel, the Florida Academic Lichen and Fungi Enthusiast League. Pretty much what we do is we'll go out, we'll gather a group of people, go into the woods, collect a ton of mushrooms, bring them out and lay them out on tables like this, and just teach people about mushrooms, identify them for them, and just overall bring awareness to mushrooms in Florida.
Our understanding of mushrooms is expanding not only through observation in the natural world, but also through the cultivation of mushrooms in controlled environments.
Feedback that I just got from the community was like people wanted mushrooms, and then I had the space here, so I began to kind of practice cultivation, starting with some varieties like blue oyster. Very mushroom manufacturing is what I feel like I'm doing. That kind of commercial process hasn't really been documented until like the 1980s. Most of the feedback that I get about what the mushrooms need or what size the mushrooms are, or the conditions the mushrooms are growing in, it comes from the mushrooms. Like if they need more air, they'll be really skinny and they won't really have a lot of meat to them. If they need more, if there's too much water, they'll be really mushy. If it's too humid, they'll be really mushy and not super like meaty and pleasant. So I just pay attention to what the mushrooms need and try to cater to that. The mushrooms are really high in fiber, so it's good for your long-term heart health. A lot of them are immunomodulators, so they affect your immune system in creative ways where they'll decrease inflammation
and they'll increase your immune responses, like your white blood cell responses to disease. And then, of course, lion's mane is becoming really popular lately for its ability to influence your nervous system and to improve cognitive function.
So oddly enough, biochemically, we are almost identical. That's why there's not a lot of drugs against mushrooms, for example, or fungi as a whole. If you get athlete's foot, for example, you kind of have to suffer through it for a while. Because if you have a bacterial infection, I can give you an antibiotic. We've got lots of those. But since we're so biochemically similar to fungi, if I give you a drug that's going to attack the fungi, it's also going to attack you. As much as mushrooms are fantastic to look at, some of them are terrifying to look at. And they have horrible smells associated with them. Things that you find sometimes in your garden after it rains, you'll get those, the stinkhorns, for example. They have a terrible smell because you're trying to attract insects that like to deposit their eggs on, dead, decaying material and such. So they smell horrible sometimes, and they look rather horrifying. When I die, I would like to be buried in a mushroom funeral shroud, and they just toss me out in a wetland somewhere, let the fungi degrade all my tissues and stuff, and then this way my entire organic residue goes back into nature.
Fungi are believed to be one of the oldest living organisms on Earth. They help break down rocks, release nutrients into the soil, and form mutualistic relationships with early plant and animal life. During the Devonian period, approximately 400 million years ago, a species of fungi called prototaxites were the largest organisms on Earth, reaching up to 30 feet tall and over 3 feet wide. The rotting plants and dinosaurs after the meteor impact created an ecological condition perfect for fungi to thrive. While decay is often linked with death, it also provides the necessary conditions for new life to thrive. Mushrooms, in particular, have a symbiotic relationship with decay, as their growth and survival rely on the nutrients and organic matter produced by the decomposition process.
It feels like I have, it's very fulfilling. I have a purpose, I have a role in the community where I can, that's just, my goal is to help people in any way. So being a teacher is really important, especially if it's a nice, it has a mission, we want to grow our own food, and then mushrooms are the future. So to kind of help pioneer that's really important.
We can also degrade all sorts of things. People are looking into bioengineering fungi to degrade plastics. Certain bacteria can do this now, but if we could just take those genes out of bacteria, put them into fungi, who knows what kind of garbage we can degrade.